If I'm using DegenData and I'm trying to analyze a project, some of the features I could see is I could go into a project, I could see who the owners are, how many owners are there, and actually how much ETH they have in their wallet.
Yeah, so if you go, I think you mentioned if you go to Doodles, that was a newer one that we added. It was one that it's got an interesting growing community. I think a lot of them are around for us to add them, we want to have some decent trade volume, enough transactions that we can actually have some meaningful data behind. And then a good community that wants to build and trade and look at this stuff. So basically what this looks at is in the top left, you just have a basic volume, total trades over time, as well as the median and average price of the NFT. And so this gives you a good health of the floor. Usually this chart, what we're seeing is in the top left, you'll see a normal trend for when a project drops day 1, 2, 3, 4. Volume is just spiking. The speculation is really high. Normally the floor, if it's just if it doesn't have a good community around it, the floor tends to just kind of follow the volume. But on the inverse, if you see a project that does good community growth, you see the floor and average and median price kind of pulling up along the way. So that's a good macro view. And then if you start getting into understanding the personas of who's buying stuff, you can look at the top buyers and sellers. So for the time range that we're looking at, the top buyer looks like it's bought, 100, has bought 4 total doodles for a total amount of ETH, and you can see who those sellers are as well. So if you see, a big signal would be for example, for punks, there's a few wallets that hold a lot. If you see those wallets just offloading stuff, then you can start to get an idea of okay, there's sell pressure coming into the market. How is it going to impact floor prices and vice versa? So that just gives you an idea of how different wallets can move these markets. And then you get, if you're a trader, so there's kind of the 2 macro levels that you can look at. And then if you're a trader, you own one of these, you want to try to figure out what a fair price is. Normally everybody kind of prices things by the floor. That's your base value, but let's say you have some traits that are interesting, then you can, slice out by specific traits. So in Doodles, if you have a specific body type, specific face or hair, however the community values those traits, you can start to slice what is a piercing versus something that, that doesn't have one. And so basically we kind of have it as we kind of view it as those 3 tiers. There's good macro on price, good overview on who's doing what, where, and then if you're an individual holder, how is the value of certain traits being adjusted throughout the market? And then the other cool part is if you click on there's a little link to a tab called Holder Stats. If you click on that, this is a great overview of the community. So we have the total doodle holders buckets. So over 50% of the doodle holders only hold 1. So there's not a heavy concentration of whales. Somebody holding 1,000 that could do whatever they want and dump things on the market, really rip the floor down. And then on the other side, you have the ETH bucket balance. So a little over half of the wallets have under 1 ETH. And then the scatter plot on the left tells you here's the distribution of wallets that hold doodles and their ETH balance. So you can see one outlier on the right has an extremely high ETH balance, but a low doodle balance. And then vice versa, there's one wallet that's got a lot of doodles and a lower ETH balance. And then the final chart is distinct holders over time. So this is a great metric to get a good idea of how the community of holders is growing. Or on the inverse, is it dropping? Is it something that people are selling? Is it somebody, as the number of wallets holding going down over time? And that could be a signal that either hardcore collectors are accumulating or the project is losing interest. So there's a lot of ways to kind of slice it, but I think that the interesting thing is this stuff is all public data. And it just takes, pulling this stuff together and, building a narrative around what you think of a project and does some of these data points support it.
So that, go ahead, Yossi.
So that's firstly awesome and amazing that you've pulled all of that data and made it publicly available for people to consume, and we'll go into the business model and how you're thinking about commercializing it if you are. But what on that holder stats that you just showed us for Doodles, what would you be looking for? What does a healthy community look like that's giving you the indication that there's something interesting here, I should go into it? And what would an unhealthy community look like? What are the flags that you're looking for?
Yeah, so one of the things that's good to see is like the holder balance on the top left pie chart is like fairly distributed amongst most wallets. So it looks like close to 90% have less than 5 doodles overall. So there's not a single concentration. And then where there are wallets that hold more than 5 or 35 doodles, how many is it? And you can actually see on that scatter plot on the bottom, if you hover over those dots, like the one at the very top left, there's one wallet that holds like a lot of doodles, but it's not like
57 doodles and 16.92 ETH balance.
Yeah, exactly. So they're not like they could have an impact on the market. So to me, that's like especially for these high circulation NFTs, like 10,000s, if you hold a lot, you have more impact. So to me, this looks like there's no one person that can really like push things around. And then it comes down to the team on the doodle side to say like, how can we engage with a larger community? So I think to me, those are some of the healthy signals. The ETH balance stuff is just, I think it's interesting to look at, like, do you have, whales in this project? And that's like a good proxy for whales. I know a lot of people have NFT whales, and that's not, your NFT balance is probably larger than your ETH balance in some cases, but I think just having a general benchmark of like, okay, here's how much buying power some of these wallets have in this community. Let's look at what they're going into. That's another thing I think is really helpful. If you see wallets that are making big bets on projects, what other bets are they placing? Let's look at what other projects they're collecting. Let's look at, what other, is it DeFi protocols or, other things that they're doing on chain, and just starting to understand like, where are they placing their bets? Because usually there's a good time if somebody's, like you're talking about with Facebook, a $10 billion bet on the Metaverse, it means it's definitely going to be something. So if somebody's putting a lot of money behind projects, I like to understand what else they're making bets on, and then obviously start my research there.
No, I actually think that's a great stat, and I know obviously there's other platforms out there, but I think the fact that you guys are looking at the ETH balance, and I think the other part of it is if everybody had, let's say, that on the doodle had below 1 ETH, you would kind of think that they're flipping this, right? Mm-hmm. Or there's a higher probability that they're going to try to flip this project because they need more ETH at one point or another, right? So they're probably bought in to flip this, which I guess from your perspective might be also good, right? Because if they're trading, it creates value, if they're trading, it creates volume. But is there any more thought behind that? Like, can we go deeper on the data to actually try to understand, like, when is the market gonna like go up or down or not?
Yeah. I think if you look at like the distinct wallet holders over time is a good metric for like the growth of people entering this space. So right now it looks like there's just under 5,000 holders for doodles. But I think that like as volume starts to pick up, volume usually precedes floor price. And if volume starts to pick up, then you envision floor price to kind of follow suit. So if there's a bunch more buying and selling, there's usually an indication that people are more interested in this project. And that usually precedes the floor price getting ripped up. And I think if you look at things like that, like from projects that have a longer data track record, like Chromie Squiggles, for example, or like Mooncats or any of those projects that you have a little bit more on-chain data to support, you can kind of apply those ideas or those hypotheses to newer projects. And so that's kind of the way that I look at it from the data perspective. There is like to trading NFTs, there's also like a big component of like vibe, right? Like, is it cool? Do you like it? Like, are your friends into it? Are people talking about it? And those are the things, again, buy the stuff you like. And if some of the stuff you like is the stuff that we're supporting, and it's an investment, obviously, like do a little bit of research, but there's always like the cross of like, also, do I like this? So I think that those are the areas we want to give you the things that outside of the vibe check that you should have access to if you're looking into stuff.
And how do you decide what are the things that you're putting on Dgen? Because it's almost a stamp of approval, and just by listing it on DegenData could have an impact on the performance of the NFTs. So what's that process like?
Yeah, so it's kind of a combo of like buying NFTs does. So we feel like there's got to be enough secondary market traction to really warrant adding data on chain. Two, you're doing something, you know, unique and new to the space that like warrants, like you're pushing the NFT space forward, or you're doing something in a novel way that's just not, you know, another 10,000 profile picture, but it's like you're thinking, what can NFTs be and how can I push them forward? And then the third is just kind of like, do we like the project? Are they, you know, does it have a good community around it? Do we see long-term roadmap? Have they executed on the things that they've done or said they'll do? And then, you know, kind of once it meets kind of those three checks, it's like, all right, we'll add it. We usually don't do anything where it's like, people hit us up and they're like, can you put our project on? And so to me, it needs to just kind of like have these checks first. And I'd rather not just like, quote unquote, give the stamp of approval for, you know, for some ETH, because I think like at the end of the day, like it's a reputational risk to say like, we just want to support things that have already proven that they're capable of delivering on their roadmap, their dev team's cool, like their community's growing. You know, you guys got to do the work to deliver on what you said, and everybody that I think we're supporting is more or less doing that. There's some edge cases, like I think people get, there's mixed reviews around mechas, but the pre-trade reveal volume was like insane, that it just like, there's so much that we have to look at here.
How long does it take you to add a project? Is it something that, you know, is a lot of work and time and effort, or is it more from the other side of like you're just trying to curate the best of the best projects and you want to be selective on the ones you pick just because you want to make sure that they're legit projects?
Yeah. Oh, do I have the URL wrong on the mechas? I might have directed you to the wrong one.
Well, let's go to mechas and dive into that after you answer this question.
Oh yeah, so there's like a standard plate of queries that we develop, and the implementation of those to get it on DegenData, build everything, takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours. And then but there's like each project has like different data points that are kind of interesting to it. There's different utilities to how it can be done or what you can do with them that are also worth exploring. And so those are some of the things that we'll like, if it requires some custom analytics, we'll build it. But normally it's about like an hour to two. The framework's all kind of like ready to go. It's just projects that we pick and projects that we like, and then we'll add them. And
did you just, so I heard you correctly, you started buying NFTs first before you started building the data, correct?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. My first like non-NFT but crypto collectible was a pair of Unisocks, and that like started kind of getting me into the like collectible idea of stuff on chain like that, but it didn't really check like the 721 standard or the NFT token standard. And then unfortunately, I redeemed the physical pair of socks. I got them hanging on my wall here. That kind of stinks, but it's cool.
It's what, like $92,000 today? If you
yeah, if I still had the token, it'd be about 90,000. So
that's a socks, if you ask me.
That's what I'm saying. I'm just too afraid to open them and wear them. That's the real flex. So that was like my first one, but I didn't like the concepts didn't really click for me. And then I was talking to a friend of mine, guy, you guys probably know him, Andrew Steinwald. He's from Chicago as well. And we were both starting businesses around the same time. And he was starting stuff in the NFT space. And he was telling me, you gotta look at CryptoPunks or crypto voxels at the time. And I mean, I took his advice, but I picked crypto voxels. So I started looking into it. Like the idea of digital ownership on land in a metaverse made more sense to me than punks. And that, like, it just had utility to it at the time that made sense to me. And that's when that was early 2020 that I started kind of like exploring, playing around. And then the third NFT that I got into was hash masks, because it kind of like, again, had a utility to it where you hold it, you accrue tokens, the tokens can change the name, it's more interactive. And so that was the one that like, I was like, okay, so there's an element of DeFi to this. There's an element of the NFT to this. There's an element of utility. and I can like, and the idea that these traits and properties like have some different value, like the value movement is different based on how these traits like you own, like accrue some sort of value. So that's kind of where I started like really diving into the data. So I had like a really like brief intro into the NFT space. Still did a little bit of research, but like really went full heads down once I participated in the hash masks.
But now, so your theory or thesis around hash masks was kind of utility will prove to be more valuable over time, and hence why voxels and not punks. But with the advantage of hindsight, punks have overtaken, and floor price close to 100 ETH, and hash masks and voxels haven't had that same type of appreciation. Yeah. Why do you think that is, and what do you think that means for the kind of conversations that are happening now? Like, where's the utility in these NFTs, but the assets without utility seem to be doing the best?
Yeah, I think that's that was like the awakening for me when I got into this stuff, because I think I was looking at it from like, I'm coming from DeFi, so the utility must come with a token that I'm buying. NFTs were more like, every time I applied that thesis, I mean, it did all right, but the idea of like, there's a community value, and that's why I think there's a lot of metrics that aren't necessarily like about like the price movement, and more about like how many people are getting involved in a project, or like you were showing like who's buying these projects, like who are new ape owners, who are new punk holders, the community aspect. As soon as that like light bulb came on, I was like, I get it now. And that was like the same thing with the cryptos. I was like, oh, these are cool. People think these are funny. Like they're cool. I vibe with them. And then, it's kind of like all those, the community aspect of like, there's a fun component. Like, how fun is this project? Like, so I think that's a lot of the things. And then there's other narratives that drive value to things that don't necessarily have utility. Like, everybody's big on, historically relevant NFTs. So obviously punks, quote unquote, claim the title of being the OG NFT, but obviously like there's things that predate CryptoPunks, but I think a lot of people see the value in like of things that were ahead of their time. And so I think that's another interesting piece. But yeah, the profile picture stuff clicked after I kind of like spent more time in Discords chatting with people and stuff like that.
So do you think, I mean, long term, do you think that's going to change? And do you think that obviously the market is getting flooded? We have, I don't know, hundreds, thousands of new NFTs coming in on a daily basis. Nobody can really keep up. Do you think that eventually, the ones with the utility and the ones that are going to be, a lot more innovative than others, obviously community is important, obviously story is important, but you think the ones long-term with utility are going to win?
Yeah, I think to think about it, like this full year being like crypto NFT year is, it's been it feels like the space is so advanced so far, but it's really been like a year. And so to judge it's true. And I think if you look at it from like a long-term perspective, and that's kind of how I think about it, having like, I've been in crypto and I've ridden ETH from sub $10 to $2,000 to $80. Like, if you can stomach and you're in it and you have conviction in this stuff, I think there is plenty of room for these things to be long-term, like household name items. And I think that like NFTs are just scratching the surface on what they can do. And I think Bored Apes is really like the one that's showing like a ton of crazy cool utility. Like, I don't own one, and I had the opportunity to get in, and I just was like, I don't know. But they're executing, they're doing really cool stuff, and they've got a yacht in New York, and they're like providing cool stuff to their holders. And I think the brand is forming, and I think like these communities are going to be massive brands in the future. And like, if you couple that with, Coinbase launching an NFT marketplace, Facebook creating a metaverse, like these things are just going to become more and more and more prevalent. If you can stomach,
the volatility.
If you can stomach like the price of your NFT, like, going down to nothing, I think you have to be ready to ride that wave and have some conviction if you're in it for the long haul.
So I'm going to ask you the one question I get asked maybe 10 times a day. Is it too late?
No.
Is it too late? Is it too late? Should I buy ETH? Should I buy my first NFT, or is it too late?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's going away. I mean, I don't think it's too late. I think there's so much cool stuff outside of the NFTs going on Ethereum in general that like the NFT market is exploding. What NFTs can do is just being figured out. Like there's so much potential locked up in what these things can do, what they can access, integrating Web3 into like traditional Web2. Like more sites are just going to start having, like Twitter's going to start supporting profile pictures. They're like Web3 integrations, and 80%, if that's being generous, is on Ethereum. And I think that like if you look at the building around, like being a builder in this space makes me very excited, because like you see the other things, like the writings on the wall when you hear people doing stuff like that, and you're like, well, this means it doesn't mean that like Twitter's implementing NFTs. It means they're integrating with Ethereum and me. And then I'm like, all right, ETH to 10,000 is like a very realistic number to me.
I agree.
So friends that I've had that bought Bitcoin back in 30K, and they're like, oh no, it's at 8 now. And I'm like, okay, just hang on.
Just hold.
Yeah, and they'll be all right. I mean, they're all good now, so everybody's kind of
except the one guy who probably sold it, right?
yeah, except for like the one person. But yeah, I do think like it's not too late, and I think like if you want to get into this space, you have to have some skin in the game. It makes it a lot more interesting, and you learn from like your bad trades. You gotta lose money up and learn some lessons.
And lessons we have all learned, some of them very painful, but
yeah.
We're in it for the vibes and having fun and learning as we go. Let's go back to Dgen Data. All the data is available and accessible, and you've put it all together brilliantly for us to be able to consume and understand without having to be a blockchain wizard. Why have you done this?
Well, one is just, I mean, I was pretty excited about like the space in general, and I think putting things out there for people to use. Crypto has been like I mean, this stuff's so fun. Like it's the most exciting space, and I feel like giving something back to a space that's like given a lot, to the people involved is nice to do. So I think for that reason, this is why we just opened it, didn't internalize it. I mean, I think we could have, people were like, shut it down, just trade on this stuff, or, run some proprietary stuff. At the end of the day, like, I'd rather have a product out there that grows the adoption of this space rather than like internalizing it and kind of keeping it to myself. Because I think like I'm long crypto for 20, 50 years. So like what's going to get more people like me 5 years ago to get as excited as I am right now? And like giving people tools, stuff they can touch, look, feel, understand, become comfortable in making investment decisions like in this space. I think it's just like a way to help push crypto more mainstream from the way that I can provide it. I'm not like a celebrity buying a punk saying like, here's 1 million followers, but I think from the people in this space that want to learn it, get familiar, that's kind of what we're thinking.